All right, Scott Pekarek here with Verde Real Estate Group and also the host of the Real Estate World podcast. Uh, Quick update today. I want to start doing my local perspectives on the real estate industry. And today I want to cover three things: the eviction off ramp that was recently signed into law in Minnesota. And today is an important um, day with regards to that, which I'll get to in a second. I want to talk a little bit about inflation, and then finally famine and what my thoughts on that. So, anyway, first off, the state legislature here in Minnesota came to an agreement as to how the governor's emergency powers and part of that was this eviction moratorium that was ostensibly put into place to keep people safe from COVID by not having them evicted and then cohabitating with, in large groups with other friends or family members. So, I thought it was a mistake to have such a draconian, I believe, violation of property rights here for landlords in Minnesota. This put an undue burden on landlords who, many of which are not, the fat cats that you think of when you think of wealthy Wall Street investors. And a lot of these were people who the moratorium put a real strain on. Anyway, so I won't get into that other than to say I was not a fan. Our company has borne the brunt of this. We've had to really work hard with the properties I personally own, and also we manage the 600 or 700 units we manage. There was a small percentage of tenants who didn't pay their rent, but it ended up being a fair amount of money. So with that being said, the goal of the off-ramp is to provide tenants an opportunity to apply for assistance here in Minnesota. There was like over $500 million given to the state of Minnesota as part of one of the COVID bills. And, a significant amount of money. The problem is it's taking a significant amount of time to get this money out to tenants. We are finally seeing checks coming in, and that is a good thing. My biggest frustration with the program is that, well, they're trying to avoid a lot of fraudulent claims. However, they have two programs here in Minnesota. One is called Rent Help MN, which the tenant applies for. And the other program is called Zero Balance, which the landlord is supposed to be able to apply for. And many of our landlords have. The problem is that still requires some tenant involvement. And if they're not willing to cooperate, what do you do? Well, I'm glad I asked, and I'm going to tell you. So, and just to back up, we want tenants to get this money. I am not at all upset that tenants can get this money. I'm glad they can get it. We've been encouraging our tenants who are in trouble. We've been encouraging them and helping them try to get assistance from the beginning of the pandemic back in March, April of 2020. The issue I have is the people who won't go through the work to apply. And it's a real problem. We have really had to get on the streets and try to encourage these tenants to apply. We've heard some things like, hey, what's in it for me if I apply? Well, you got to live somewhere without paying rent for the last year and potentially get 3 more months. So I'm like, that's a significant amount of money. I would apply for it if I were them. Anyway, so here's the thing. So there are some actions that are prohibited. There's a 105-day off ramp, and that started June 30th. So can you kick someone out of the property if they're not paying rent? Well, yes, if they have not applied for assistance. So you may file an eviction. This is important. A landlord may file an eviction or proceed with an eviction against a tenant who is eligible for assistance through a COVID-19 rental assistance program and who refuses to apply for assistance through the program, refuses to provide information needed by that landlord to apply for assistance on the tenant's behalf. That would be zero balance. Or refuses to provide the landlord with proof that the tenant applied for assistance through the program. So we do actually have a few people who fall under this exception, because technically you cannot evict right now, except now what do you have to do? And trust me, we have reached out to these people no less than 15 to 20 times. So at least 15 days prior to filing an eviction against a tenant based on non-payment of rent, a landlord must provide a written notice to the tenant with the following information. Number one, the state eviction moratorium has ended and the tenant may soon be subject to an eviction action. Number two, the amount of rent past due is, insert the amount. And then number three, the tenant should visit renthelpmn.org, renthelpmn.org, or call 211 to see if they are eligible for financial assistance. Okay. So that's very important. And we've sent these letters out to several people, and thankfully most have responded in the affirmative. Now, you can't terminate or non-renew residential leases except in these cases. This is something different now. So you can't just terminate a lease, someone else month to month, or do non-renewal of their leases unless this person is seriously endangering the safety of others or significant damage to the property. I had someone ask me today, they have pit bulls who are biting people in the neighborhood, and I would probably say that's endangering the safety of others, but ultimately a judge decides. Now keep in mind, this is only for 105 days starting June 30th. So basically in I think October 14th, 15th, this sunsets. So there is hope if you've got someone who's being a real problem right now, or more importantly, if someone wants to sell the property, you want to get out of, you don't want to be a landlord anymore and you want to sell the property. This will prohibit you from asking the tenant to leave. In those situations, I would just ask if you can get some kind of bilateral agreement with them. Say, hey, I'll give you $2,000. I want to sell this property. Okay, would you be willing to move out? Okay, you can't force them to, but you can certainly offer them something of value to leave and have a bilateral agreement. Crime-free violations, you can evict for crime-free violations. If you want to look at the bill, 504B.171 subdivision 1, email me. My email's in the comments section or in the notes section, or call me 612-600-8888. Also is in the description of this video. Number one, in seriously endangering safety of others. 2, crime-free violations. 3, you can evict if there are material violations of the lease other than non-payment of rent. Okay, what's an example? Maybe it's they've got a pet when you don't allow pets. Maybe it's they've got people who are staying there who aren't on the lease. Hard to prove that a lot of times because they'll just say it's a guest. I mean, I was a renter for a long time, and I knew how to work it too. So number 4, after 45 days of the enactment of the law for those with outstanding rent who are ineligible for rental assistance. So what does that mean? So basically a month and a half after June 30th. So middle of August. Still going to want to send that 15-day notice letter. And if they don't provide proof, well, let me back up a little bit. If they don't provide proof that they've applied, you can do it within 15 days of that time period, right? If they have applied or rejected but are applying somewhere else, again, it gets a little gray there. It gets a little bit of a slippery slope. You're gonna have to err on the side of the tenant, all right? Or else you're gonna waste time and money going to court. Following actions are prohibited. Filing eviction actions under 504B 285, breach of lease, non-payment of rent, except, here's another exception. Let's see, seriously endangering the safety of others or significant damage to property. That's kind of a repeat. Crime-free violations, also a repeat. After 15 days of the law for material violations of the lease other than non-payment of rent, after 75 days of the enactment of the law. Oh, this is kind of okay. Okay, after 75 days, sorry, of the enactment of the law for those with outstanding rent who are ineligible for rental assistance through COVID-19 rental assistance program. So again, encourage them to apply, help them apply. If they won't apply or won't cooperate, give them the 15-day notice letter. Once they get served, they might go into compliance. You know, the bar is pretty low for people to get this money. I've seen all kinds of people from all kinds of different life conditions, employment status, you name it. What else is permitted? Termination of residential rental agreements specific to mobile home parks, delivery of security interest default notices specific to mobile home parks. That won't apply to most people. So anyway, if you need help with this, you need a referral to an attorney. I know ones that are extremely well versed in this. If you want to talk about different scenarios, need moral support, give me a call. Again, 612-600-8888. Now, that being the educational portion of today's video, I want to talk a little bit about inflation. So the good news on the inflation front is that, well, there's no good news. Inflation's here. It's kind of like the movie Twister when they said, you know, the F5 tornado is coming, and the guy shouts, no, it's already here. Well, inflation's here. Anybody who's filled up their gas tank in the last week definitely should see that. Anybody who's been shopping for groceries, bought lumber. You know, the thing with lumber is you had that hyperinflation spike, and now the prices are coming back down. I think lumber sells per 1,000 board feet. I think it's now futures are under $700, and I could be off by $50 either way, but that's from a peak of about 1,700. So, and we think that'll keep people smarter than I believe that'll continue to drop. I do as well. There's a few different theories. You know, the obvious one is people are just saying, no, we're not going to do these projects because, you know, it's too expensive. Some people believe that many people who stayed home during COVID were, you know, doing home improvement projects, and, you know, they're going on vacations this year. Builders are holding off until prices come down because the buyers don't want to pay what could be up to $30,000 or $40,000 premium to build their house just because of lumber costs. You're seeing spikes in steel right now. It's across the board, and which is a segue to what I wanted to get to, which is something not a lot of people are talking about, maybe on the periphery a little bit, but the drought that we're experiencing pretty much nationwide right now. There is a massive drought going on here in really the entire country. I mean, you might be better shape down in Florida, the Southeast a little bit, but the Midwest is frying right now. And the West we hear about all the time. They've had about a 15-year drought, 20-year drought off and on. But what's happening is the crops that are, the Midwest, the center part of the country produces a massive amount of corn, wheat, beef, dairy. And what's going to happen here, if there's such a small fraction of that land is irrigated, so they're heavily reliant on the rains, and we have had very little rain this year. I think here in flyover country, reporting here from the bunker today, but in flyover country in Minnesota, we are probably 6 or 7 inches below the norm for the year. I mean, just like severe drought conditions coming. And I'm pretty old. I remember 1988. I grew up on a dairy farm. I remember when the crops just cooked in the fields, and 87 was fairly dry too. I don't know if it's quite that bad, but I've got some real concerns what's going to happen with the farmers and their cattle if they don't have anything to feed them, or if the price of hay goes up, by from $4 a bale to $8 a bale, depending on the size of the bale. I don't want to quote anything right now because you could say, well, our hay bales are blah, 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 whatever. Corn prices, we're using a lot of corn to make gasoline, and meanwhile leaving the gasoline in the shale. And what's going to happen when the price of corn doubles because of the massive impact the drought is going to have in these fields. And for many places, the damage is already done. So I hope I'm wrong about that. I don't think I'm going to be. I've been looking very closely. My yard, where the community I live in, has had a sprinkling ban since mid-June. And my yard feels like, it feels like we're walking on straw. That's how dead everything is and dormant. So anyway, keep an eye on that. Now, famine sounds a little dramatic, but I think the drought is going to lead to higher inflation in food. And that's not good. That affects the poorest among us the most. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Scot Pekarek, Verde Real Estate Group and the Real Estate World Podcast. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, or you can reach out to me. My contact info is in the description. All right, I'm out of here.